Anything that's not a deadly weapon, you can't kill them.
I'm gonna object at this point in time. It's calling no predicate for a legal opinion. Because you're talking now about a legal opinion.
Didn't he put forth all his training
Judgment
experience?
approach.
Yeah, approach. Go ahead.
Based on the extensive conversation that was had on direct examination regarding your background, isn't it true that if an object, a non-deadly object, is thrown at you, thrown at anybody, you can't kill that person for throwing that object at them, correct?
If it's
That's kind of a hard question to answer because
I'm going to
It
give
would
you an example.
depend-
I'll give you an example. Okay? I'll give you an example. Someone throws a plastic water bottle at another person. It hits that person, falls to the ground. You can't kill that person for doing that, correct? That's the fact pattern. That's all it is. That's all I'm asking you.
that would, under those conditions, no, sir.
Now, you were talking about all the different units that you've been assigned to at the Tampa Police Department, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, if you came across somebody that had a firearm, for example, you could hold them at gunpoint, correct?
As a civilian,
No,
as a law enforcement officer,
correct.
you would, if you came,
There's
You had-
same objections concerning his position as a police officer, where he wasn't a police officer at the time of this incident.
Okay, I'll rephrase it. Okay.
Thank you.
As a civilian, isn't it true that you could pull out a firearm and just point it at somebody in self-defense?
in self-defense?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
And you were indicating that you had been trained in de-escalation tactics, correct?
Yes, sir.
And de-escalation tactics are when you can reduce the intensity of a conflict, right?
Yes, sir.
And a way that you could do that would be to loudly say something, use words, correct?
I think it would depend on circumstances.
I understand. I'm just asking you of all the different ways, right? So one of the ways that you could do that is you could use words.
Yes.
Okay. Another way you could do it, as we indicated before, is that if you had a firearm, you could simply point it at somebody.
I don't think that's a good idea. If you point a firearm at someone, you have no idea what their capabilities are. It could be theirs that they could take it away from you very quickly,
Okay. But at a distance, they couldn't do that.
not at a distance.
Okay. So you could use words. You could point a gun at them. You could also do a combination of both, correct?
Are you talking about as a civilian or as a law enforcement officer?
Well, you were talking about the de-escalation tactics that you were trained in, so that's what I'm talking
Oh,
to.
okay.
I'm talking about your de-escalation tactics. I mean, you testify that you're trained in all this, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you could really utilize that at any time, right? That's part of your training.
As a law enforcement officer, yes, sir.
Okay, are you saying that those tools that you learned as a law enforcement officer, you would just abandon them and not use them in the real world? Meaning de-escalation tactics?
I don't think I would point a gun at anybody being a civilian.
Okay, what I'm asking you is this. You've learned in all the training that you can de-escalate a situation by using words, right?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. And you can also de-escalate a situation, if necessary, to raise a gun without firing it.
Yes, I suppose it may not be a good idea if you're not a law enforcement officer.
Okay, and I understand you're not going to give me that. Now, in the past, when someone's had a weapon, you've held them at gunpoint and told them to drop their weapon, correct?
Yes, sir.
You give them every opportunity before you would fire a shot, correct?
Absolutely.
Because that would be a last resort, correct?
Correct.
And I think you indicated that at Busch Gardens you are also trained in de-escalation tactics, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And at Busch Gardens you're dealing with other civilians, correct? Just people who are at a park.
Yes, sir.
And you weren't law enforcement at Busch Gardens, you were security for Busch Gardens.
Correct.
So you were using non-law enforcement de-escalation tactics at Busch Gardens with just regular citizens who were at the park?
I think their de-escalation is kind of universal.
Right, and that's my point. That's kind of what I'm getting at with you.
Right.
Is that you can use these universal de-escalation tactics to calm things down, especially in a movie theater.
Correct.
Now, you indicated that you were on several different units at the Tampa Police Department, correct?
Yes, sir.
You indicated that you were on patrol,
Correct.
went to a surveillance unit, fugitive warrants, robbery, homicide, and SWAT, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, would you agree with me those are kind of adrenaline-filled units?
Yes.
And obviously by participating in these units, you kind of like for the lack of a better word, the dangerousness component of it. You like to be involved in that type of activity, correct?
I would never say that.
Okay. Well, you didn't shy away from those assignments. You volunteered to go into those positions.
That's correct.
All right. You actually gravitated towards those positions. I mean, every one of those would be a position that entails that an angle, so to speak, of danger.
I think the opportunities were there. I didn't consciously gravitate towards them.
Okay, well, when they opened up, did anybody force you to go into those positions?
No, sir.
Okay, you volunteered to go into those positions.
Yes, sir.
And also, when the positions in the command opened up, you went to apply for those and eventually ended up in a position to command at the department, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you would gravitate towards positions where you would be in control.
I gravitate to positions to make more money.
Okay? But it's also, you were able to control people, correct?
That came with the promotion, yes, sir.
Now, there was a certificate that you had about firearms instruction. If you are firing from the hip, what do you do with the other hand? How do you prevent yourself from shooting yourself?
The training that we used to train is that you kind of put your left hand out in front of you. You kind of hang it out there to balance out your body.
Okay, so you put it out in front of the firearm?
No, you put it out kind of to your side. And I don't think it's called hip shooting. I think what it's called is instinctive, or I think I've heard index shooting, I think it is. You try to maintain a body positive position, which means you stay perpendicular to the target, and you kind of put your left hand a little out in front of you so that you're kind of balanced when you come out with the firearm.
Okay, and when you're sitting, isn't it true that you would take the other hand? So for example, you shot with your right hand in this case, correct?
Correct.
And so when you're in a seated position, so you don't shoot yourself, you took your left hand and you placed it close to your body, correct?
No, I've never trained to do that.
Okay. But that would be a way that you would avoid shooting yourself if you instinctively took your left hand and brought it across your body.
Yeah, but I've never done that. Never.
You've never done that before?
I've never trained that way. No, sir.
Did you do that in this case?
No, sir.
You didn't take your left hand and put it close to your chest?
Not intentionally.
Well, I'm asking you if you did.
I don't have any idea. I think I had, if I'm not mistaken, a bag of popcorn.
Okay. So just to be clear, when you fired the shot, you didn't take your left hand and put it close to your body to avoid shooting your own left hand?
No, sir.
Okay.
Not intentionally.
Now, you indicated that you had a license, correct? And that was an HR 218 license?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you got that in February of 2013?
Yes, sir, I think so.
Okay. And in order to qualify for that license, you have to shoot a 40-round course, correct?
Yes, sir, I think so.
Okay. And you qualified on both the pistol and revolver, correct?
Yes, I did.
So that would be 80 rounds that you had to shoot then, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, and again, that was in February of 2013.
Right.
When you qualified with the pistol, you had a magazine, obviously.
Yes.
And how many rounds would fit in that magazine?
I don't remember.
Okay, and in order to load the magazine, obviously you have to press the bullets in. This is going to sound silly, but press the bullets into the magazine, correct?
Well, you pull down with the pull down the magazine spring, and you just drop the rounds in the top of the mag.
Okay, and you just have to keep the pressure on the spring each and every time for each and every bullet, right?
You just hold it down and put them all in at once.
And each time you load one, you have to push a bullet in, so there's a little bit more resistance each time, just a little bit.
No, you hold the spring down, and you put them all in at once. You just drop them in one at a time. You only depress the spring once.
And for a revolver, there's 6 bullets in the revolver?
I don't remember if it was a 6-shot or an 8-shot.
Nevertheless, there's 80 different rounds that you had to load during this course, correct?
There's directions on how many rounds to load, yes, sir.
Obviously, you didn't have any difficulty doing that because you were able to get your license.
Correct.
Now, you were obviously present when your daughter Jennifer Shaw testified, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And she was talking about how you ride your bicycle, I think it was a road bike and a mountain bike, several times a week in 2013,
Correct.
right?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
And apparently you need coordination for that, right?
Boy, yes, sir.
Okay, I mean, so when you're testifying about the balance difficulties that you've been experiencing for years, you were okay to ride the bike?
Correct.
And you would ride the bike on trails?
No.
No?
On paved surface, I'm sorry. It's a Withlacoochee Trail,
Okay.
but it's
And-
paved.
All right, and when you were to go riding, you'd have to pick the bike up, you'd have to put it on the car, drive over to wherever you were using the trail, take the bike off, right?
Correct.
And you heard her testify that on 5 to 6 occasions, the two of you would go to shoot sporting clays, right?
Correct.
And we heard everything that she described about how that works, how you have to load the shotgun, unload it, everything that she indicated obviously is correct, right?
I think you load your rounds by dropping them in the ejection port rather than pushing them in the bottom. Yes, sir. That was the only difference.
All right, and you were able to track the target as it went across. Now, let me ask you this. Wouldn't be a good idea to do that if you're experiencing balance problems, right?
I never had a balance problem handling a weapon.
Okay. And you could obviously walk the course. You chose not to take the golf cart, but you walked it instead.
Correct.
She described the kayaking, walking around the neighborhood, pulling the wagon, archery in the backyard, all the yard work covered during direct examination as well, correct?
Correct.
Let's talk about the movie theater. Lighting-wise, the lighting was obviously good enough for you to find your seat, correct?
The lights were on when we came in.
Okay. But at some point in time, you did leave to go talk to the manager.
Yes, sir.
All right, and that was during the previews.
Yes, sir.
All right. And the lighting was good enough for you to leave and come back without any difficulty.
The majority of the lighting was coming from the screen, from the shows.
Okay. But what I'm asking you is this, there was enough light for you to leave your seat, go to the manager, and come back.
Correct.
You could see fine.
Yes, sir.
And when you left to go to the manager, you didn't have any concern about your wife, correct? Obviously, you left her by herself.
That's correct.
All right. And there wasn't any issue with Chad Olson at the time that you left.
At that point, he was just being mouthy. He had presented no threat at all to me or anybody else.
The lighting conditions at that time were safe enough, so to speak, that you were able to, and you felt comfortable leaning forward and telling Chad to turn his cell phone off.
Yes, okay.
And at that point that you leaned over to Chad, there wasn't any safety concern at that point, correct?
I don't know what you mean from
The
him?
first time, when you leaned in,
The gentleman object, he's asking that.
you didn't have any safety concern when you first leaned in to tell Chad to turn his phone off, correct?
You mean for me or?
For you.
No, sir, I didn't.
Okay. And the reason that you were leaning in was because you're saying that he had his cell phone on, right? And by on, just it was illuminated.
It was shining in my face, yes, sir.
Okay. So he was holding it out in front of him, and it was shining in your face, and that was bothering you.
Yes, sir.
Now, if you wanted to at that point, I guess you could have gone up and spoken to the manager at that point, correct?
It wasn't a big enough problem at that point.
Okay. But what I'm asking you is if you saw that, if you felt as though that you were in a vulnerable position, meaning, we heard from Dr. Cohen that maybe your perception of yourself would be that you felt vulnerable. If you wanted to at that point, you could have just gone right to the manager and not had any contact with Mr. Olson, right?
That wouldn't make sense. I would think that you just ask somebody and they would normally put it away.
Okay. But what I'm asking you is you had the option. If you wanted to, you could have just got up at that point and gone to the manager.
I suppose, yes, sir.
Now, at this time in the theater on January 13th of 2014, you were 6'2", about 270 pounds,
Thereabouts, yes, sir.
and you had just returned from a week-long hunting trip, correct?
I think it was about 5 days.
And obviously, you were fine to sit in the car for a long trip to go up to North Florida.
We stopped for gas and so.
Okay, just
I don't-
normal things like that, correct?
Yeah, I don't recollect.
All right. And Matthew testified that when you would get out to go hunting, you'd walk 100 yards to go to the hunting spot, correct?
Thereabouts, yes, sir.
And during that particular trip, you climbed up 10 feet in the tree stand, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And that's where you had to bring the bow and arrow up, right? And you hunted from that particular spot, right?
correct.
All right. Now, you'd agree with me that someone that perceived themselves as vulnerable wouldn't climb up 10 feet into a tree and hunt, correct?
I think that I know what my capabilities are, and I felt comfortable doing that.
So you weren't concerned about you testified about all these issues that you found about, you weren't concerned about your shoulder or your back or these discs. I mean, it was fine enough for you. You felt comfortable enough at that point to go 10 feet up into a tree and hunt.
It's very easy to do, and you have a safety belt on. Not much can happen.
So on that particular day, you go to the theater and you drove, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, obviously you felt good enough to drive, you felt good enough to park a distance away from the front of the theater and walk to the theater, right?
We parked the closest parking spot that was not handicapped.
Okay, but still quite a distance away.
I don't recollect.
You went into the theater, you were waiting for your son, texting on your phone, correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
No difficulties doing that. Now, when you chose the seats that you were going to sit in, you chose the very back row, correct?
Yes, correct.
All right. And you chose the middle seats, correct?
It was close to the middle, yes, sir.
All right. And you didn't have any concern for your health or stability or things like that, knowing you had to walk all the way to the back, all the way over to the middle, correct?
I had a hand railing going up the stairs, and then I used the wall to go across the back, but no, I didn't have any concerns.
Okay. And you know you had to go across people, obviously, if you're sitting in the middle.
I don't think there was anybody there when we came in.
Well, right, but if you're sitting in the middle of a theater, you know at some point people are going to be on either side of you.
That's correct.
All right, so you sit down, Mr. Olson is in front of your wife, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And he was always a row down and to your right, correct?
Yes, sir. He was one row down in
And one
front of my
seat
wife.
to the right.
Yeah,
Okay,
correct.
so during this entire event?
No, sir.
So was he off to the right of you?
His seat was off to the right of me, and when he jumped up, yes, sir.
All right, let's talk about exactly what happened. So you lean forward the first time and you tell him to turn his phone off. Or you
Yeah.
ask him,
I asked him to turn his phone off.
okay, and that's your testimony is that you asked him to turn the phone off.
I asked him to turn his phone off.
All right. And that's when you leaned close up to his face, correct?
I was not close up to his face.
Okay. Well, the video would be the best way to determine that, correct?
That's correct.
And at this time, you had a loaded firearm in your right pocket, correct?
That's correct.
And you indicate that at the time that you leaned forward, Mr. Olson cursed back at you.
Yes, sir.
So at this point in time, based on your testimony, you know at that moment that this is someone that you probably shouldn't re-engage with.
That's why I went to the manager.
Okay. Now, even though, according to you, Chad Olson cursed at you and told you that he didn't want to have any contact with you,
He did
despite
not.
that,
He did not tell me that he did not want to have contact with me.
okay, well, basically, you're indicating that his statement was one that let you know he did not want to have contact with you.
It let me know that he wasn't going to, he had no intentions of putting his phone away.
Okay, but if I think your quote was, he said, what, get the F out of his face?
And F off.
Okay, so are you telling this jury that if someone says that to you, that's not their way of saying that they don't want to have any contact with you?
I think it's up for interpretation. It was not expected, and it didn't sound particularly violent. It just sounds like somebody mouthing off.
Okay, well, the way that you made it sound was that it was something that was fairly violent because that's what raised your concern level.
I was not concerned at that point.
Okay, so are you saying that when someone says to you, I'm going to say it just for fact, when someone says, get the fuck out of my face, you don't take that as a way of someone saying, leave me alone?
When they're, I suppose that you could reach that conclusion. My conclusion was it was just a guy being mouthy.
Okay, but he actually told you to get out of his face.
First of all, I wasn't in his face, and he was facing the other direction.
Okay, but it doesn't matter which way he was facing. He basically told you to get out of his face. He's telling you he doesn't want to have any contact with you.
And I didn't.
Now, you then get up and you go to the manager, correct?
No, sir.
Okay, because what happens is you first lean in and you tell him to turn his phone off, and that's when he replies to you.
I asked him to turn his phone off. I did
Okay.
not tell him to turn his phone off.
And he responds the way that he did, that we just discussed.
Correct.
All right. So then you waited another 30 seconds, right?
To see if he had put his phone away. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
And even though he had said to you, get the F out of my face, Instead of getting up and just going to the manager, you decided to lean forward and engage him again.
I told him he left me no alternative than to go to the management.
That's right. But you did not have to lean forward and say that to him. You could have, as a form of de-escalation, gotten up and just gone out and got the manager at that point.
I think the whole contact that I had with him was an attempt at de-escalation.
Okay. He originally tells you to get the F out of his face. There's nothing that prevented you at that point in time to just go to the manager.
I think we've agreed to that.
Okay, but instead of just getting up and going to the manager, you took it upon yourself to lean in again and reinitiate contact with him.
Yes, sir, I think we've had that. We talked about that.
Now, at this point in time, you could have moved, correct? I'm not saying you were under an obligation to do so, but if you wanted to de-escalate it, and if you felt as though you were a vulnerable person, you could have moved like your wife wanted to.
Correct.
And your wife actually mentioned it to you, but you decided that you weren't going to move.
Yes.
And you heard your wife when she said that, correct?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Do you need to refresh your memory on anything?
No, sir.
All right, so you did hear your wife and you told her that you weren't moving.
I didn't tell her anything.
So now you go to the manager, and at this point you've already had 2 contacts with Mr. Olson, right?
Correct.
You get up, you have to walk past 2 sets of people. You have to walk past Jane, Roy, and you have to walk past the Turners, right?
Correct.
Okay. Obviously you didn't know their names then, but there was 2 sets of people you had to walk by.
Yes, that's correct.
Now, when you're at the manager's desk, you tell the manager, I think your testimony was, he, meaning Mr. Olson, doesn't seem to have the right attitude for me to try and talk to him again. You recall that?
I don't know if those were the exact words, but I apologized to him first off that I had to come down there on a grown man, and then I told him that I had tried to get a gentleman that was sitting in front of me to turn his phone off, and he had used profanity, and I didn't think it would be appropriate for me to try to talk to him again.
And so did you tell the manager that the guy's got an attitude and that he told you to F off?
I did.
Okay. Now, you speak to the manager. Let me ask you this. You very well could have waited for the manager to go back into the theater with you.
He didn't offer to go back in the theater with me.
Okay. But you could have waited, though, right? You had a conversation with him. You could have said, hey, I'd like you to come back, and, I'm going to wait for you. There's nothing that prevented you from saying that.
The manager told me I could return to my seat.
Now, if you felt as though there was, that there was an issue with Mr. Olson, obviously you would have waited.
At that point, there was no issue with Mr. Olson.
So when you come back into the theater, now at this point, you reinitiate a 3rd time with Mr. Olson. So we have the first time that you lean forward to talk about the cell phone. The 2nd time is when you lean forward, tell him that you're going to the manager. Now we have a 3rd time where you're leaning forward to basically tell him that you told on him.
When I came back in, he was looking in my direction. I believe I said he was staring.
Okay. Well,
And he was,
Go on. Sure. Go on.
and he was speaking out loud. I don't know if he was speaking to his wife, or I think he was trying to, in my opinion, he was very loudly trying to proclaim that he was concerned about something.
Okay.
And
Let me ask you this. So you're saying now that he was staring at you.
Yes.
Okay. And obviously that was something that was important to you.
It caught my eye. It wasn't important.
Okay. Well, didn't you testify that the reason that you said something to him when you came back from the manager was because he was staring at you? That was your way of just de-escalating it.
What I said was that he was talking out loud. I heard something about the theater and the manager,
Okay,
and that's.
I don't think you're, I want to make sure, well, he's not answering my question.
Objecting, he's saying.
Sustained, give him a chance.
What I'm asking you is this. When you came back from the manager, you reinitiated with Chad Olson, the person who already told you to get the F out of his face, the person who had already told you that he didn't want to have any contact with you. With your background training experience in de-escalation, you go to the manager, you come back. You reinitiate another time, a third time with Chad Olson, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the reason that you did that, I think you testified during direct, was because he was staring at you, or he was looking in your direction.
And he was talking out loud, speaking to the theater or to his wife, and he was commenting on that I had been to the manager.
Okay.
I didn't get all the words. And
Did you tell Detective
I'm
Proctor?
going to object again.
Well, I'm just asking if you about staring.
One at a time, that goes for everyone. Let him finish. Sustained.
Did you tell Detective Proctor that Chad Olson was staring at you when you came back from the manager?
I don't recollect, sir.
Okay. Would it refresh your memory to take a look at your Post-Miranda statement?
Sure.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
I'm going to give you both statements so that you can review both of them. After you finish reading them, let me know.
Do you want me to review the whole thing?
If you can review as much as you want to refresh your memory as to whether or not you told Detective Proctor.
Can we have a page in a line?
That there is no page and there is no line.
Well, there is a page, but you have to give us some kind of line. If not, we're going to be here for 30 minutes just to read the whole thing.
Okay, I can rephrase it. Would it surprise you to learn that nowhere in your Post-Miranda statement did you ever tell Detective Proctor that Chad Olson was staring at you when you returned back from the movie theater? I'm sorry, from the manager.
Probably not, no, sir.
Okay, so what I'm asking you is this. You never told Detective Proctor that Chad Olson was staring at you when you came back from seeing the manager?
I don't think so, no, sir. But I'm not sure.
Okay, well, that's why I want you to refresh your memory with your statement. Look in there, and if at any time you see that Chad Olson said, or that you told Detective Proctor that Chad Olson was staring at you, to let me know. I don't want you to guess about anything. Take your time and read through your statement.
You want me to read this whole thing?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have some idea where this might be, sir, so I don't have to read the whole thing?
I'm sorry?
Do you have some idea where this might be?
It's not in there.
Then, okay, then I'll agree with you. I didn't.
Okay. I mean, I didn't want you to take my word for it.
I will.
Okay. So, what you told Detective Proctor was that you had a contact with Chad to tell him to turn the phone off. Then you told him you were going to the manager. You come back from the manager, and with all your de-escalation tactics that you're aware of, you reinitiate Chad Olson another time.
To de-escalate, yes, sir.
Now, you say to de-escalate,
Yes, sir.
but in your tape statement, Detective Proctor, you indicate that you are the one that reinitiates the conversation with Chad Olson. Isn't that correct?
Because he was talking about me going to the manager.
If you can look at the Post-Miranda statement that's in front of you, I'm directing you to page 6. lines 19 through 22. Tell me when you're finished reading that to yourself.
I finished.
Okay, so when you came back from the manager, you went over and you saw that Mr. Olson had put his phone away, and when you went by, I said, I see you put the phone away. I told the manager for no reason. In other words, I went in and ratted you out.
That, well, I mean, that, I went in and ratted you out was my comment, not what I said to him. He's the one that was, he wasn't talking to me, he was talking to someone else. I guess I was responding to what he said. I was trying to de-escalate because it seems like with the stare and the other stuff that he
Okay.
was very, still concerned.
In your statement to Detective Proctor, the one that you just read,
Mhm.
you did not tell Detective Proctor that you overheard Mr. Olson or that Mr. Olson in any way said anything to you. You said that when you came back from the manager, you were the one that reinitiated, correct? That's what's in the Post-Miranda statement.
Okay, yes, sir.
Okay, I don't want you to just agree with me, I want you to look at it.
I did.
Okay, so when you told Detective Proctor, or when you spoke to Detective Proctor, you told him you reinitiated with Chad.
I told him, when I talked with him on the phone, I can quote it if you like.
No, it says, I came back into the movie, the guy put his phone away, I went by, I said, I see you put it away. I told the manager for no reason. Correct? That's what it says.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what I'm saying is it doesn't say anywhere that you heard Chad saying something and that you were trying to de-escalate. It doesn't say that anywhere in the statement.
Okay.
So going back to my original question, this is the third time then that you yourself reinitiated with Chad Olson.
That would be the indication, based upon what I heard him saying.
Okay, but again, and I'm going to move on, you never told Detective Proctor that you heard him say anything.
Correct.
And obviously, you didn't perceive yourself as a vulnerable person because this is the third time that you have initiated a contact with Mr. Olson.
I don't think it had anything to do with being vulnerable.
I agree with you. Now, when you had come back, Chad had turned his cell phone off, right?
I have no idea.
Okay, well, if you look in the same exact spot that I was just referring to refresh your memory, it was at page 6, lines 19 through 22.
Jack and Proper each said turn it off versus put it away. Okay, later question.
Okay. When you had come back, Chad Olson had turned off his cell phone, correct?
It says here that the guy had put his phone away.
Okay, so he had put his phone away.
I have no idea if it was off or on. I didn't see it.
Okay, but you put it away. All right, so he did exactly what you wanted him to.
I suppose, yes, sir.
So at this point, everything was fine.
As far as I was concerned, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you were wearing sneakers that had reflective material on it on that particular day, correct?
Yes, sir.
May I approach the photo?
You may.
I'm showing you what's been admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit number 50. These are the sneakers that you're wearing on that day?
It appears to be, yes, sir.
Okay. And on the sides or on the back is where the reflective material is?
I think on the outside, I can't really tell, but whatever the gray area is, I think it
Okay.
reflects.
So in the back, you see the gray area?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so wherever it's gray, as you indicated, that's the reflective material.
I don't know if it's all reflective or not.
Okay, well, you know that your shoes reflected light on that day, correct?
Only because the sheriff's office took a bunch of pictures.
May I have the witness step down and use the TV?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I reposition myself?
You may.
in state citizens, what? Is this number 2? I'm referring to State's Exhibit number 2 for these questions, for the record. Do you see yourself standing up over here?
Yes.
Okay. And when you stand up and you start to walk, can everybody see? You can see a reflection on the bottom of your shoe, correct? See that right there?
Looks like it's on the outside of the right foot, yes.
Okay. Okay. You see yourself sitting right here in the back row?
I think, yes, sir, I think I see my wife and
Okay. And this is you with the popcorn in the back row?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Now, when you sat down, you took your right leg and you crossed it over your left leg. Correct?
That looks like it's in front of my wife's face, sir. And I don't know if I crossed my leg or not, sir.
Okay. But what you can see here is you crossing your right leg and your shoe reflecting from the light. Correct?
I don't know, sir. That's an odd angle. I can't tell that.
Okay. Well, the light is moving with the leg. Correct?
Okay.
Well, I'm asking you.
I don't, sir. The popcorn bag was right, I don't know. And as far as I know, the expert's going to
Okay. Well, I'm just asking you if that's your leg moving.
it appears to be, yes.
Okay. Now, you're coming back from the manager at this point. I'll play a little bit more. You're coming back, and you're sitting back down. You grab the popcorn, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's you.
Yes, sir.
All right. So if you look in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see another reflection down here, correct?
Yes, sir, I think so.
Okay. And it's moving at the same time that your leg is moving, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Much like when you were moving your leg and you put your right leg over your left leg before, we see the same movement with reflection, correct?
I don't know that I put my right leg over my left leg, but it looks like the outside of the shoe, yes, sir, I think.
Okay.
It looks like it's maybe the side or something.
This is when you come back from the manager. Now, obviously, we just watched, that was you that sat down, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when you sat down, in this particular frames, you once again put your right leg over your left leg, correct?
I don't recollect that. I don't recollect crossing my legs.
Okay. Is it a possibility?
I suppose it is, or the popcorn bag, or I don't know. Well, right there, you see Mr. Olson throwing something. That would be a pretty good indicator to me.
Okay. Did I ask you a question about that just now?
You asked me what I saw in the video.
No, I was asking you about the reflection on your shoe. We're going to get to the whole event. Okay, don't worry about that. I'm just asking you about the reflection on the shoe.
I have no idea.
Now, there's been a suggestion that at some point in time you were hit maybe with a cell phone or a fist at this point in time, correct?
I don't think it was a suggestion, it was a reality.
Okay, and we'll talk about that. But in looking at this series of events, you had come back from the manager, you're sitting down in the seat, and when you sit down, you crossed your right leg, and that's the reflection that we see. Would you agree with me that when you're moving forward, the reflection is your right leg going down?
At the same time, Mr. Olson is entering the frame, and I don't know, sir.
Okay, well, what I'm asking you this, you've seen the previous frames where every single time you're moving, we see that light source moving. Now here we are in this series of frames, and the light source is once again moving when you're moving your right leg. Isn't that correct?
I see it on the bottom of my shoes, yes, sir.
Okay. So what we see here is your leg crossing and uncrossing, and that's exactly what the white light is.
I don't see, I see my leg crossing, I don't see them. The light is at the same time Mr. Olson is coming across.
Okay. Well, Mr. Olson wasn't in the last series of clips that I showed you when the light source was moving with your phone, was he?
Those were pretty apparent.
Okay. Well, looking at this one, you don't see your right leg moving?
I see my right leg coming up, yes, sir.
Okay, and you see at the same time that your right leg's moving, you see that light being
I see it on the
reflected?
floor, yes, sir.
Okay.
I don't know if I cross my leg, but I see it on the floor, just like I did in the other view. It's on the floor.
Okay. Now let's take a look at this one. Now look at the bottom right-hand corner. Okay. So this is where I'm going to be directing your attention.
I see.
Okay. Right over here. Do you see that light reflecting?
Down below my wife?
Correct.
Okay. Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. You see it? Now, is it a coincidence that your right leg is once again moving at the time that we see that light?
I'm getting away from him, and
I'm not asking you what way you're moving. I'm just asking you about the reflection of your shoe when you're moving your leg. In other words, every single time that you're moving, in all the clips that we've seen, that's when you see the reflection.
that looks like it's on the right-hand side of my wife.
Okay? But aren't you moving at the same time?
So is my wife.
Are you suggesting to the court that that's your wife's shoe?
I'm suggesting to the court that that's my wife moving next to me.
Okay, I'm not asking you if your wife's moving next to you. I'm asking you about the reflection when you're moving, consistent with all the other times there's a reflection when you're moving.
There is a reflection below my wife, or looks like to the right of my wife, and I'm moving and she's moving.
And in fact, talking about your wife, she's facing Mr. Olson at that time, correct? But as soon as the shot's fired, she looks to the left.
I can't tell head direction there.
You can't tell that she's looking straight here and then looking right at the shooting.
No, that's right.
You can't tell that.
I can see the top one.
Okay, and you can also obviously see the reflection down here.
I see a spot down there by my wife, yes.
Okay. The fact of the matter is, based on what we demonstrated, at no time was a cell phone thrown at your face at the time that you had come back from the manager. That's simply the reflection of your shoe.
I think there's nobody that can answer that but me, and I got hit in the face.
I'm going to be using this in a little bit to go through what happened if you wouldn't mind returning.
Is that showing on my screen too? Okay, then I'll put it on the screen.
Now, I believe you indicated on direct examination that you had said, and correct me if I'm wrong, you had said to Chad that you were sorry for telling on him.
Something similar to that.
Okay, well, what's similar? Did you say I apologize? Did you say I'm sorry?
When I got back from the manager's office,
Correct.
yeah, sorry, I don't know exactly what I said.
Okay, well,
It was
you didn't-
it was an effort to diffuse any situation that might be there.
when you spoke to Detective Proctor, you never told Detective Proctor that you apologized to Chad in order to try to de-escalate the situation, did you?
I don't know that I called it an apology, no, sir.
Okay, well, let's not play word games because it's really important. And I don't mean to be sarcastic. Okay,
Oh,
did you
let's
say,
move on.
did you say, I'm sorry, I apologize, or any word whatsoever that would give an indication that you were sorry or apologizing? When you spoke to Detective Proctor?
I don't, when I spoke to Detective Proctor, I told him that I did speak to him when I came back.
Okay, but you didn't specifically tell Detective Proctor that you apologized to Mr. Olson, you said you're sorry to Mr. Olson, any words of that effect? That's the question that I'm asking you.
I don't think so. I think I told him that I don't know that I formed it as an apology, but
Okay, but you didn't say anything at all like that?
I don't think so. To Detective Proctor, right?
Correct. All right, so let me ask you this. How many times are you saying that Mr. Olson attacked you? Twice?
I think we were, at the time, he either hit me in the face, and I suspect very, very, very strongly, rather than a fist, it was a phone. And then you saw him grab the popcorn. I was not aware of the popcorn, but I was aware that he was trying to grab a hold of me.
Okay, so
And then he pitched it back. I'm not sure I saw that, but I did see him coming over the seat with his fist
okay.
at the instant he got shot.
Okay, we're going to talk about all of that, okay? I'm asking you how many attacks there were. So based on your answer just now, you are saying that there were 2 separate times that you were attacked by Mr. Olson.
Correct.
All right, and the very first time was when you came back from the manager, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's the time that you're saying that it was a fist or a phone, correct?
Right.
And you're saying that you strongly believe it was a phone.
Very strongly.
Okay, so you must be saying that by getting hit with this phone, it must have been so hard that you actually realized that Mr. Olson is a danger to you. In other words, if he tossed the phone at you or dropped the phone towards you, it wouldn't be a big deal.
He hit me in the face. I saw him as a threat at that point, and I tried to get out of his way.
Okay, so he hit you in the face. Your testimony is with a cell phone.
Yes.
Okay. Now, isn't it true that you told Detective Proctor that you weren't sure it was a cell phone, and in fact, you only put 2 and 2 together, so to speak, when you looked down and saw a cell phone?
That's pretty much accurate, yes, sir.
Okay, so today you're testifying, I'm fairly certain it was a cell phone, but the day of the shooting, you told Detective Proctor, I don't know what it was. I looked down, there's a cell phone. Must have been a cell phone, right?
At the time I interviewed with Detective Proctor, I had not seen the video.
Well, why would you have to see the video? You lived it.
My impression at the time that I was hit was that he was perhaps too far away for a fist. When I saw the phone, I put 2 and 2 together. He hit me in the face with his phone.
Okay. So a minute ago you said you hadn't seen the video. So you're not telling us that you're tailoring your testimony to what you witnessed in the video, are you?
I think the video is supporting my position.
Okay. Even though it's been shown that the reflection was clearly your shoe?
I don't think at every instance it's been shown that way.
Okay. So you're indicating that there were 2 separate times. Okay, so let's talk about only your post-Miranda statement with Detective Proctor. Then we're going to talk about this additional attack. Let's talk only about your statement to Detective Proctor, okay? All right. To Detective Proctor, you indicated that you had come back from the manager. You already need you to refresh your memory?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes, sir, I had come back from the manager.
Okay. So you indicated to Detective Proctor that you had come back from the manager and you had reinitiated with Mr. Olson, even though he had put the phone away, correct?
I think, yes, sir, that was pretty much it.
Okay. And obviously you could have just gone and sat in your seat and not had any conversation at all with Mr. Olson.
Except that I heard him complaining about the manager.
Okay. And we've already established that's not in this Post-Miranda statement.
That's correct.
All right. So assuming that that didn't happen, just for the sake of my question, because it's not in the Post-Miranda
I'm
statement.
going to object, Your Honor. I can't assume that it didn't happen. He's testifying just the opposite. That calls for speculation at this point.
I'll sustain.
So you come back from the manager and you sit down. Now, the words that you use to Detective Proctor are as follows. Chad turns around in his seat. You recall that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And the word in means he is in his seat and he turns around. Correct?
In my statement, I believe I was interrupted by a deputy who brought me a drink, and when he turned in his seat, he stood up.
Okay. If you need to, refresh your memory with the Post-Miranda statement transcript.
I did.
Okay. All right. In there, you told Detective Proctor, when I came back, Chad turned around in his seat.
Yes, sir.
And then you discussed something that we're going to get to in a second that happened right after that, correct?
The deputy handed me a drink that had a pile of ice on top of it. It kind of interrupted the conversation.
Okay. Really, this is what I'm asking you. You said that Chad turned around in his seat. Forget about when the deputy interrupting you after the fact doesn't mean anything. Your language,
Judge,
your
I'm gonna
word.
object, move to strike. It does mean something. For him to be testifying what it means and what it doesn't mean is from the witness stand that means something.
Let's rephrase.
Prior to being interrupted, you used the words, Chad Olson turned around in his seat.
Correct. And stood up. Not on the deposition.
Your Honor, I haven't asked the witness a question. All right, I'm going to direct your attention to page 6, lines 26 through 37. Read them to yourselves and let me know when you're finished, please.
Through 37.
Page 6, lines 26 through 37. Just read them to
Okay.
yourself and tell me when you're ready. And if you think you need more context, you can go up to line 19. So it'll be 19 through 37.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so when you read that, going in chronological order, because I would assume you're explaining it in chronological order.
No, well, no, sir, I wasn't, but I understand.
Okay. So when a detective is asking you to explain what had happened in a shooting where someone died, and with your background, training, and experience, you're saying that you weren't explaining it in chronological order.
I think if you read the whole thing, I was probably in shock for what had just happened, and there's a lot of things that are injected at different places.
Okay. All right. So let's read through this. So
Okay.
starting at line 19, you indicate that you had gone back into the movie. I came back to the movie. The guy had put his phone away. When I went by, I said, "I see you put it away." I told the manager for no reason. In other words, I went and ratted him out. If he was going to put it away, I would have gone and and Detective Proctor says, "Right," and you say, "Makes sense." And he turns around in his seat, and then you talk about a drink.
Right.
Okay. Then you said, and
I'm going to
he.
object. It's either impeachment or it's not impeachment. Improper predicate for whatever he's doing.
Your Honor, the witness wanted to be placed in the context, and this can only be placed in context by reading this.
Well, there's got to be a question,
Okay.
and he's got to have the opportunity to answer. So ask the question and let him answer.
Okay, so we already discussed the exact wording. He turned around in his seat. After that, and I'm specifically speaking on page 6, line 36, you indicate, we're starting on 35, when I had come back, that's when he had said that. His wife is holding him back, so I had sat down. I think I got the bag of popcorn from my wife, and so he jumps up and turns around.
Yes, sir.
Okay? So you had originally indicated that he turns around in his seat, and after he had turned around in his seat, you indicated he had jumped up. There'd be no reason for him to jump up if he turned around in his seat, correct?
I would say that probably he turned around and jumped up all at the same time. It was one motion.
Okay. But what you stated in the statement was, when I returned from the manager, we came back. He says, if it was any of your effing business, I was texting my daughter, stay the hell out of my face. I think that's when he said that. His wife was holding him back, so I had sat down. I got the bag of popcorn. He jumps up and turns around. Now, let me ask you this. May I briefly have the witness step down again?
You may.
Publish 2 pictures in front of the jury. I'm going to be referring to Defense Exhibit 9-1 and 7-3.
Were they admitted?
Yes, Your Honor.
That's not what they came in. Is it 9, composite? Yes, Judge.
The was a 9.
Okay, all right. So it's a composite 9, and those are the individual pictures.
I'm going to have Mr. Reeves stand next to me.
Okay.
Looking at, first we'll look at them together, and then we're going to show them to the jury. Looking at 7-3, the timestamp on the bottom is 13/26/25, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Point
So,
point
322. Okay. So this happened closer in time than this one because this is 13/26/36.266, correct?
This one's first.
This one was first because it's this 25
Oh,
here.
I got it, okay.
Okay, and 36 here. Okay, so this one happened first.
Okay.
All right. Now, looking at this is when you're saying that a cell phone hit you. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what it appears to be. Yes.
Okay, that's what you're
That's
testifying.
because I could see Mr. Olson's arm all the way across the back of his seat, or back behind his seat. Yes.
Correct, and that's what we're going to be talking about right now.
Okay.
So, would you agree with me? And we'll turn and show. I'm going to show you first, and then we're going to show the jury. Let me ask it this way: was he standing at this point in time?
It happened so quickly, I'm not sure. I think he was. He was either in the process of standing, or whether he turned and stood or stood and turned. I'm guessing he jumped out of his seat and flipped around.
Okay, so I'm just trying to make it clear. Was he standing or he wasn't standing?
I don't know. At the time.
Just give me just 1 second. I'm going to show you, this is page 1850, lines 10 through 14.
I can't hear you. Listen.
You want him to read it to himself?
Yeah, just read it to yourself.
Which one's that?
10 through 15, to see if that refreshes your memory about when you returned from the manager, if you indicated that he was standing up.
It sounds like he was jumping up and turning around like this.
Okay, so what I'm asking you is this. When you look at Defense Exhibit 7-3, and then you look at Defense Exhibit 9-1, In 7-3, he's not in the same position as 9-1. In 9-1, he's standing. In 7-3, is consistent with your statement to Detective Proctor that he turned around in his seat. Do you see a difference between?
Okay, what, ask me the
You-
question one more time.
You gotta talk louder.
Okay, try it one more time.
Okay. You were indicating that Mr. Olson was standing up when he struck you. Looking at Defense Exhibit 7-3, which is the top one,
Right,
and looking at Defense Exhibit 9-1, which is the bottom one,
right.
you'd agree with me that they're in two different positions.
Yes, yes, both of them.
Okay. And that in 7-3, he is turned around in his seat, meaning sitting down, which is consistent with your original statement to Detective Proctor.
The location of the camera, the angle that the camera is coming at, gives you a misperception of where he's at, and because he's right on the very edge of the frame.
Okay?
And he moves over from the center of his seat, or from wherever he jumped up, almost to his right. So
Okay, but-
it's misleading.
Okay, but it's the same camera.
Yeah.
Okay, it's the same angle. So in this one, he appears to be sitting, and the very same camera shows you he appears to be standing.
That means he's just standing in two different places. Actually, in his seat and in front of his wife.
May I publish these to the jury?
Yeah. Can Mr. Reeves sit down again?
Yes.
Do we have people arriving for a 1:30 calendar? Is that what the deal is?
Yes, Your Honor.
Can we put a sign out there?
There's 3 signs out there already.
That was a Tampa lawyer.
I know, I saw. Nothing's going on here.
Our apologies for Tampa.
Okay, we're going to keep going with your statement that was given the day of the shooting to Detective Proctor. We're going to go in order, okay?
Okay.
So, you come back from the manager, we're not going to have a discussion about turns around in the seat anymore. After that, you indicate that Mr. Olson jumps up, correct?
At the same time, we're talking about, I don't know, we're looking at the videos that are in milliseconds. So I think in real life, we're talking about milliseconds between standing and jumping up. Yes, sir.
Okay, so my question to you was, after you said that he had turned around in his seat, he had now jumped up, so that's the point that we're at.
He's on his feet, yes, sir.
Okay.
And he's turned around and he's facing me.
Okay, and you indicated to Detective Proctor that the moment he jumped up, the popcorn went by the wayside almost immediately.
I didn't know what happened to the popcorn.
Okay, didn't you tell Detective Proctor that immediately when he jumped up, the popcorn went by the wayside? Whether he took it from you, or you yourself dropped it, or it accidentally fell, it doesn't matter for the purposes of my question. My question to you is this. After you said that Chad Olson jumped up, you said that the popcorn went by the wayside immediately. Do you remember saying that to Detective Proctor?
I believe I do, yes, sir.
I didn't hear your answer.
Yes.
Okay, so according to you, immediately upon Chad Olson jumping up, the popcorn fell. Let's talk about what you said to Detective Proctor after the popcorn fell. After the popcorn fell, you told Detective Proctor that Chad Olson was virtually on top of you.
Correct.
So after the popcorn fell, he was virtually on top of you. Now, virtually on top of you would mean that he was basically in your row, virtually on top of you, correct? That's what you meant when you told Detective Proctor.
What I meant by that was that I was seated, he was standing over me, he was a giant. I have no idea if he was on his seat, I don't know. He was leaning over the back of his seat, yes,
Okay.
sir.
Now, when you say leaning over the back of the seat, wouldn't you agree with me? That's a lot different than someone that's virtually on top of you.
That would be my interpretation of somebody who's attacking me, yes, sir.
Okay. You've been in law enforcement for a long time, right?
27 years ago now, almost 30 years.
Okay. You written police reports in the past?
30 years ago.
Okay. So how many reports do you think you've written? Thousands and thousands and thousands of reports?
I have no idea.
Okay. I mean, what I'm saying, though, is you haven't written 3 or 4.
No.
Okay.
Correct.
And in fact, as a supervisor, you probably reviewed reports of officers that were under your command, correct?
Correct.
And when you're reviewing reports, you're making sure that the reports are very accurate, very detailed, because you know that both the state attorney's office and defense attorneys are going to be looking at those reports to find out truthful and accurate information. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. You're reviewing it for content. Not
Okay.
because you weren't at the scene, you don't know how accurate it is.
Okay, but you're reviewing it to make sure there's sufficient information and it's detailed because you know how important it is.
Correct.
Okay? And when you authored your own reports, you certainly wanted to make sure that the words you choose were extremely critical and that the words you choose were very accurate, correct?
35 years ago, yes.
Okay, so you're saying now you don't think it's important to be accurate with your words?
I use different words now.
Okay, I'm not asking you what words you use. I'm talking about the actual words that you use. It doesn't matter what the words are. It's that you're accurate whenever you speak. In other words, here you are describing an event where you believe, and we'll get to it, that you're in a life and death struggle, right?
Correct.
Wouldn't you agree with me that the words that you choose, the content, is so incredibly important?
I would think that the content, if it relays the feeling at the time, I'm not sure. Everything is important in this kind of an investigation.
Okay, so here's what I'm getting at. Today you're saying leaning over. Back on the day that this event happened, you tell Detective Proctor he's virtually on top of you.
That would be similar, yes, sir. They would mean essentially the same.
Really?
Yes.
Leaning over and actually on top of you to the point where you think you have to kill someone is the same thing.
I think you're trying to make it sound like he's physically on top of me.
Okay.
He was attacking me. He was very large. He was trying to come across his back seat. That would be my analogy of virtually on top of me. Yes, sir.
Okay. And you indicate that while Chad Olson is virtually on top of you, your left hand is out and you're yelling, no, 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 or whoa, whoa, whoa.
I am trying to dissuade him from coming across, and my thought is, yes, that my hand is in front of me.
Okay, and when you read all these sentences that we're breaking up together, this is the picture. Chad Olson is virtually on top of me, so I have my left hand out. Now,
No, I said it was in front of me, I'm sorry.
okay, well, let's just keep going through the statement. After that, isn't it true that you say, I'm holding on, I'm touching something, it's his chest, or it's his arm?
I wasn't sure that in retrospect, I think that's when he grabbed the popcorn, he hit my hand.
Okay, we're not talking about in retrospect. At the time that you gave the statement
No,
to
I-
Detective Proctor, at the time, closest in time to the event of when you shot and killed Chad Olson, didn't you tell Detective Proctor that Chad Olson was virtually on top of you? You
Yes.
have your left hand out. He's virtually in your lap, and you're touching his chest and his shoulder area to give the impression that he is on top of you, and that's why you're going whoa, 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 and no, no, no.
That's correct.
And at that time, and again, this is all after the popcorn fell.
Again, the popcorn, I had no idea where it was.
Okay, I'm not asking you if you knew where it was. Based on your statement, you said when he jumped up, the popcorn fell immediately. All of this that we're talking
I
about was
didn't
after
say
the
it.
popcorn fell, according
Okay.
to you, Detective Proctor.
Okay,
Okay? I don't want you to just agree with me. That's what you said in your statement.
okay.
So now, to Detective Proctor, you said that suddenly your head was to the right, you were hit with something, you assume it was Chad Olson's fist, correct?
Or something thrown at me.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now here's where I'm going with this, because right now we're only talking about your first statement to Detective Proctor, right?
Okay,
All right. I mean, that's what we've been doing this whole time, right?
right.
All right. Now, in a while, we're going to talk about the statement that you made today in court, where you're saying this whole event about being hit was right after you came back from the manager, a whole separate time, 9 seconds before. But on
Okay.
the day of the shooting, you're talking about this happening after the popcorn had
That is not
fallen.
what's in this statement. This is not what this jury heard earlier in audience.
Approach.
The Post-Miranda statement that you have in front of you, page 7. To put this in chronological context, you can look at page 6, just the very bottom. On page 6 at the very bottom, that's where we talked about that Mr. Olson had jumped up. Is that correct? Are you on page 7 now?
Yes, sir, I
Okay, so at the bottom of page 6, it discussed
Right.
where you said that Mr. Olson had jumped up, correct?
am. Yes, sir.
Okay, now we're on page 7, so we're just
Okay.
going chronologically.
Okay,
If you look at lines 11, 12, and 13, it's at that point that you indicate Mr. Olson had jumped up, and now he's virtually on top of you, correct?
Judge, I'm going to object and ask on the doctrine of completeness for him to read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and to go all the way to that, under the doctrine of completeness.
I'll read the entire thing.
Okay, sustained.
We're just gonna read through page 7. He's pushing back. There's a crack between us. I'm leaning back in my chair. I got nowhere to go. And if just follow along, so if at any time I say anything incorrect, let me know.
You're on line what, sir?
And then now I'm on line 8, page 7.
Okay,
This is you.
all right.
I'm leaning back in my chair. He kept on hollering. I'm not sure what was said, to be honest with you. He said something that led me to believe he was going to kick my ass. I don't know if that's exactly how he phrased it or not, so I'm looking briefly, and I can't go anywhere. Now, here's the part that we were discussing. I'm leaning all the way back in my chair to get away from him. Suddenly, he's virtually on top of me. So we went from Mr. Olson jumping up, then what we just talked about, and he's virtually on top of you, right?
He only jumped up once and turned around. Yes, sir.
Okay, but we're still talking about after the popcorn drop.
I don't know when the popcorn left. I'm sorry.
Okay. We had already established that you said that as soon as Chad Olson jumped up, the popcorn went by the wayside immediately, right?
But I don't know at what point.
Okay, immediately.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, immediately is the point. When Mr. Olson jumped up, the popcorn went to the wayside immediately. That means right then, correct?
Okay.
Your Honor, I'm going to object again. That is not in a chronological base on the transcript.
Your Honor, he
There
could.
is nothing that
Overruled.
precedes.
So you indicate that you're going backwards, correct?
I'm going backwards because he's coming at me. Yes, sir.
Right, okay. And you indicate that he's virtually on top of you, your left arm is out in front of you. You can read, this is lines 18 through 25. And you're saying no, 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 or whoa, whoa, whoa. So while you're back and he's virtually on top of you, your left hand's out. You're yelling no, 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 or whoa, whoa, whoa. And at that time, that's the time that you're saying you were struck in the head.
No, I was struck in the head as soon as he turned around.
Okay? Well,
Instantly. I mean, there was nothing that preceded that.
okay. Read lines 18 through 21. I'll read it to you. And you're sitting down, and there ain't no way to get out. So I'm stretched out trying to get away. My left arm is out in front of me. I'm either saying no, 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 or whoa, whoa, whoa. Suddenly, my head was to the right, so he hit me with something. I assume it was his fist. With his fist or something. I think he had his cell phone in his hand. I saw the blur of the screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's my point, Your Honor. That is the correct one. He is trying to impeach him on something.
Your Honor, I would object to the speaking objection.
Sustained, I mean, overruled on yours and sustained as the speaking objections. You can approach, but you don't need to right now.
The picture that you have painted for Detective Proctor, and again, this statement is in evidence, the members of the jury can listen to themselves, okay? You indicate that when he jumped, the popcorn went by the wayside immediately. After that, you're explaining that Chad Olson is virtually on top of you. You're leaning back, you have your hand out yelling, whoa, whoa, whoa. And it's at that time you're struck. That's what this statement says, correct?
Let me think about the time frame here for a minute. The first time I was hit was preceding anything else. This time this is what I mentioned earlier about jumping around. I know what this says, but I also know when I was hit. I don't have an explanation.
Okay, so you don't have an explanation as to why a statement to Detective Proctor on the day of the shooting is so different than today.
I think that I was excited. I was scared. I think that once you have adrenaline going in your system, I may have confused one item with another. This
Okay.
happened over a period of seconds. I mean, virtually seconds, and in my mind, much quicker than that.
Okay. Would you agree with me that the powers of observation fade over time?
I would agree that, yes, that would normally be the case.
Okay. In fact, The phrase that I just used, the powers of observation would fade over time, is the phrase you yourself used in the statement with Detective Proctor.
Okay,
Would you agree with me?
I would agree with that. It's
Okay.
factual.
So, we're 8 years past the time of the shooting, correct?
Yes, correct.
And if the powers of observation fade over time, it's kind of interesting that today you have added a quote-unquote second attack. Now, the reason, and I'm asking you this, wouldn't be the reason that you added a second attack is you're trying to justify this shooting by making an attack appear to have occurred 8 seconds prior, when in your statement to Detective Proctor, it occurred after the popcorn had fallen on the ground.
I never put the two together. He only hit me one time, and then he was reaching for me the other times, just like when he was shot. He was reaching for me,
I understand, and the jurors have the Post-Miranda statement, and they listen to your testimony,
right?
okay? And the stories on your Post-Miranda statement and today are very different.
We're dealing in microseconds today, and I was dealing with stress then.
Okay, well, 8 seconds isn't microseconds.
I don't know anything about 8 seconds.
We'll get there in a little bit.
Okay.
Now, you indicated that while your left hand was out, because Mr. Olson's virtually on top of you, you believe you were touching his shoulders or his chest because he was virtually in your lap. Do you remember saying he was virtually in your lap?
I do.
Okay, and that's why you're touching him, because the picture you're painting for Detective Proctor is he's on top of you. And you indicated in your statement to Detective Proctor that you were surprised you didn't shoot your own left hand, correct?
I was, yes, sir.
Okay, that's because it was out in front of the gun, correct?
That was my perception, yes, sir.
Okay, now you'd agree with me that had your hand truly, really been in front of the gun, there'd be stippling all over your left hand.
The gun was in a, I think you guys call it index shooting position. It would have been very close to my body. It would not have been extended. It would be pretty close to my right hip.
Okay, you're the one that said you're surprised you didn't shoot your left hand,
I
right?
am. Yes, sir.
I didn't make that up. You said yourself you're surprised you didn't shoot your left hand,
That's correct.
okay? Because the gun was in a position where the bullet would come out and shoot your hand. So your hand had to actually be in front of the muzzle. That's the only way you could be afraid you'd shoot yourself.
Your illustration of having your hand straight out in front of you is not what my thought was. My thought was it was down by my hip, and my gun was down by my hip. So all this sticking your hand straight out in front of you had never crossed my mind.
Okay, but in your statement you're saying that you have your left arm out and you're surprised that you didn't shoot yourself.
Okay.
I mean, there's no way around that.
Perceptual distortion.
Okay. Or is it you're trying to justify a shooting that's not lawful?
That would be a fabrication
Correct.
for you.
Now, based on just Detective Proctor's statement, you indicated to Detective Proctor that you were hit on the left side of your face, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, today here in court, you said it was over your left eye, correct?
That's the left side of my face, yes, sir.
Okay, well, wouldn't you agree with me there's a difference between over your left eye and the left side of your face?
I think they're both located in the same place.
Okay, and I really don't mean, I'm truly not being sarcastic, okay? Over your left eye is over your left eye. This is the side of your face. You can't be telling this jury that over your left eye and the left side of your face is the same exact position, are you?
I never thought about a distinction between what you just illustrated. The left side of your face is the left side of your face, or your left eye is the left side of your face. I never differentiated between the two.
So there's no difference between the front of your face and the side of your face to you?
When you illustrate it, there would seem to be. My statement was completely different. I didn't see a difference.
And you're indicating in this statement, and again, we're still just talking about Detective Proctor's statement, that you were hit so hard that you were dazed.
I think dazed, surprised, shocked, All those things would fit that, yes, sir.
Okay. And you yourself said in a tape statement that you bruise easily.
On my arms and my, yes, sir.
Okay. And you heard Jennifer and Matt testify you bruise easily, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right. So here's what you're testifying to. You're testifying that there's I think it came out, a 6'4", Chad Olson, who's full of rage, is virtually on top of you, and he punches you or hits you hard with a cell phone, so much so that you're dazed, yet you easily bruise and there's not a single mark on your face. That's what you want this jury to believe.
Yes, I do.
Not a single swelling, not a single red mark, other than your left eye lid has a little bit of redness on it. That's the extent of the injuries a 6'4" person put on you when they hit you hard enough to daze you, correct?
And knock my glasses off, yes, sir. Or, I'm sorry, askew would be the right word.
And you remember listening to your own witness, Dr. Adams from the medical examiner's office, who talked about all these bony parts and their skin, and the skin's so thin on the side of the face, and you'd expect all these traumas, yet there's not a single mark on you from being punched.
I disagree with the single mark comment.
And everything that we just described isn't even visible on the video, is it?
It was a perception on my part. I was scared. This guy was completely out of control. Didn't seem to be acting rational. I was so scared until I was not sure exactly where he was, but I knew he was attacking me.
Okay. So your perception was an attack that never occurred.
That would be a misstatement to say it never occurred.
Okay. Well, the video's in evidence. The members of the jury could review the video. And you would believe that you were in a life or death struggle prior to the shooting?
Yes, sir.
May we approach Your Honor?
Yes. Take a 10-minute recess. Please remember my instructions during the break, and don't do any independent research. Don't talk about the facts of the case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. And we'll see you at 10 after. Thank you. Thank you. All right. We ready again? You can bring him in.
Ready? Thank you. Got a couple minutes.
Okay.
Ready? Thank you. Jurors in the courtroom, Your Honor. Jurors may be seated. Jurors are all present. May I come in for Your Honor?
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, were you all able to abide by my instructions during the recess?
Yes.
All right, thank you. I can't get this up on my screen. It's not. It's my fault. I have to push a button and I don't know which one. I've pushed every button I can figure out and that probably didn't help either, so
It's okay,
I'll
I'm
have
having
to,
technical difficulties as well.
I'll have to step down.
All right, we're going to move on from the first statement that you gave to Detective Proctor. I want to talk about what your testimony is today. Okay? Today you're testifying that there were 2 attacks, and that the first attack happened immediately when you got back from the manager, correct?
As soon as he jumps out of his chair, yes, sir.
Okay. And may I have the witness step down, Your Honor?
You may.
And I'm going to need to move this up.
I can see on the screen, I'll stay here.
Everybody see? More this way. Okay, so everybody see? Okay, so your testimony is today, you came back from the manager, okay? Okay. This is you coming back from the manager, correct?
Excuse me, Mr. Rosenwasser, what exhibit is
So
this?
this is State's Exhibit number 2.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so here, this is where we see you coming back into the screen, correct?
I'm coming back into the screen, I'm not sure. Okay.
Now you sit down,
Yes, sir.
you cross your legs, Now, your testimony is this is when you're attacked, correct?
Yes, it's right after I sat down, yes.
Okay, and right here, I don't know if anyone, can you all see this?
Yes.
I don't know if it's better to use the pointer or the laser. Okay, right here, you see where this is?
Yes.
Okay, that's Chad Olson, correct?
Yes, right there.
Okay, so let's keep an eye on Mr. Olson. And I'm just rocking this back and forth. You see him turning around in his seat here, correct? He's just swiveling at the hip as he's looking back at you.
All I can see is a head and an arm. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I mean, your testimony was is that he was standing up and he attacked you. But if you look at the video, doesn't it look as though he's turning in his seat?
He turned in his seat and jumped up. I don't.
Okay. Well, your testimony was at this point, the implication was, based on what happened during the trial, was that this light right here that's attached to your shoe was supposed to be the cell phone possibly. So it's at this point in time that your testimony must be that you're being attacked.
I am being attacked right now. Whether the white light is a cell phone or not, I have no idea.
Okay. Now, let's watch this. So this is going forward. Okay? Now, at this point, and this is the loop that was admitted as defense exhibit, at this point,
Judge,
you're saying
that's
that...
what- I object, that is not the loop that we admitted. That is completely different, ours was done by our expert.
All right,
Okay.
then,
I'll rephrase it.
okay, thank you.
This is our video, of course. Obviously not the loop that was your defense exhibit, okay? What I meant was this is the period of time that's depicted on the defense exhibit. Now, you're telling this jury that at this point in time, a cell phone was thrown at you, correct?
Yes, sir.
And your testimony was that at this point in time, Chad Olson is standing up and threw his cell phone at you and hit you in the left side of your face.
At this point, I get in the face. He's turning and standing up. I think you're showing microseconds down there. In my mind, it was all one move.
Okay, in your mind it could be all one movement, but when you look at the video,
You can't tell.
you can't see it because it didn't happen.
You can't see it because he's not on the screen.
Right. So if he's not on the screen, he's not attacking you.
If he's not on the screen, he's off the screen.
Exactly.
Has nothing to do with whether he's attacking me or not.
Okay, so you're saying that when he's off the screen here, this is when the cell phone comes flying at you.
I think we've been through that, but at this point in time, it looks like a big distance there. We're looking at, I'm thinking 12 to 15 inches is where he's at. He's just right on the very edge of the screen.
Okay, I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay? Did he punch you with the phone in his hand, or did he throw the phone at you? Because I think your testimony was that he punched you with the cell phone.
I wasn't sure because it happened so quickly.
Because clearly in looking at the video, there's no part of his body striking your face. Right? Because as you indicated, he's not even in the frame.
Okay, you threw it.
All right, so what you're telling this jury is that Chad Olson threw his several $100 iPhone at your face.
That would be a reasonable expectation.
Okay, and obviously for you to fear for your safety so that you have to shoot Chad Olson later on, that cell phone had to be thrown pretty hard at you, correct?
It was, yes.
Okay, yet you don't have a single mark.
Judge, I'm gonna check, ask and answer, that was 20 minutes ago.
This man.
Well, Your Honor, this was a completely separate incident that Mr. Reeves was testifying about. That's the reason I'm going into this particular cell phone. This is a different incident.
All right, just continue.
So you're indicating that he threw it at you now, he didn't punch you with it, yet you don't have an injury consistent with being hit with an iPhone at such a great speed that you'd be later concerned for your safety.
I have on glasses that absorb the impact, that's my only thought. They were not askew on my face. Perhaps there was a glancing blow. I was hit in my face.
Okay.
Chad Olson.
Okay, and the glasses that we passed around to the members of the jury, they rest on your nose like all other glasses, yet you didn't have any markings from the part that holds the glasses close to your nose either.
See that on any of the photographs?
Right.
Can you guys speak up? I'm sorry. Can you please speak up?
Okay, I'm sorry.
I can't hear you.
It's right here for you, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so now let's talk about what happens next. Your testimony was that Nicole Olson is now standing up trying to hold Chad Olson back.
I don't think I ever said Nicole was standing up.
Okay. Is your testimony that at any point in time after this, Nicole Olson is standing up, holding Chad Olson back because he's raging towards the seat?
My focus was on Chad Olson. She had a hold of Chad Olson. I have no clue whether she was standing, partially standing, sitting, I don't know.
Okay. Did you ever see Nicole Olson trying to hold Chad Olson back after the cell phone's thrown at you?
I did.
Okay. And she's holding him back because your testimony was that he's coming to get you and he's this raging guy with a contorted face, right?
Yes.
Okay. And now, you saw the video where you were walking into the theater. We did that early on. You remember that? Okay. When you were walking into the theater, was there a fight happening in the theater?
Here I'm walking at?
Right.
No, there's no fight.
Okay.
I
And
don't
then,
know what was on the screen, but
okay, I'm not talking about the screen. I'm talking about people in the theater. There wasn't a fight or something crazy going on, right?
No.
Okay. And here's what I'm saying. When you're walking into the theater, this motion-activated camera picks you up just walking with your wife casually to sit down in a seat, correct? You saw that?
I did.
All right. Now, you want this jury to believe that Nicole Olson is holding Chad Olson back. And he's raging come at you. During the time period that this motion-activated camera isn't picking it up. correct?
Objection, Your Honor, improper predicate, it's not picking up anything in row B. Anything in row B.
No?
That camera's picking nothing up in row B.
Excuse me. We can approach, no standing objections, please.
Can we approach?
Yes. And what is?
Hearing page 1867 and 1868.
I'm going to object, what's the question?
I'm addressing what you...
What is the
Okay,
question?
can we look at that? want to talk about what's happening during this blue screen, okay? The blue screen, there was testimony by Mr. Koenig that the blue screen is unrecorded video segments. You remember that? No,
Objection.
that's in ours. It's in
Objection.
your
It's
video,
black
it's black.
screens.
I'm doing that. In our video, it's blue. In your video, it's black. Regardless, it's an unrecorded section that wasn't picked up by the motion detection system. You recall that? Okay, so during this section, this blue section, was Nicole Olson trying to hold Chad Olson back, and he was pulling away from her. He looked as though he was out of control in a fit of rage, trying to get over the seat to you.
During that brief period of time, she had a hold of him, not when he jumped up and turned. I didn't see her, I was only saw him.
Okay, what I'm asking you is this. During this period that was not recorded by the camera system, was Miss Olson trying to hold Chad Olson back because he was trying to get over the seat to you?
She had a hold of him when he first jumped up. I would assume she had a hold of him then.
Okay. Would it refresh your memory to take a look at this hearing?
Sure.
Bottom of page 1868.
Yeah, that fits pretty much what I said. She had a hold of him before he jumped up. She had a hold of him while he was standing up.
So Chad Olson was pulling away. He looked to you like he was out of control in a fit of rage, trying to get over the seat to you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yet, my point being, when you're walking into the movie theater, the camera system is picking up just you and your wife walking in, correct?
When he first got there.
Correct. But this description that we just talked about, the way you're portraying it, he's trying to get over you, and she's holding him back. The camera system doesn't capture that. Yet it can capture you just walking in the movie theater calmly.
It doesn't capture anything on there, brother, the camera system.
Okay? It doesn't capture it on your row. There's nothing captured here. The camera isn't picking anything up. There's no significant movement. It's not that it's not capturing the row, it's capturing nothing. Isn't that correct? The blue screen is not capturing anything at all.
I see what you. It's not detecting motion, is that what you're saying?
Correct. You're portraying this, that Nicole Olson's holding Chad Olson back.
He's trying to answer, and it's one interruption after
It
another.
hasn't. I'm sorry.
No, I'm listening.
It doesn't key on their row at all.
You're right. But when you're looking at this blue screen, which is a black screen in your video, it's not keying on any row because it's not detecting any motion. Isn't that
Well, I'm
correct?
stuck to my seat, yeah.
But you're saying that Nicole Olson is fighting with Chad Olson, who's trying to get over the seat, yet it's not recording any motion.
Their row does not trigger, in my mind, does not trigger the camera in that row. If it did, we'd have full view of everything that he did.
No, the reason you don't have a full view of everything he did is because
Objection,
your
Your Honor,
camera angle.
that's not a question. He is argumentative at this point.
Isn't it true that the reason you don't see that row is based on the camera angle? Has nothing to do with the motion activation system?
It has to do with the fact that they're on the very edge of the camera system. I have no idea how it works.
Remember when I was asking you questions about your left hand? And if you're shooting, I use the term shooting from the hip, it's
Right.
incorrect, but we were talking about where your left hand would go, that to keep it out of muzzle path,
Right.
that you would put it close to your body.
That was I've never done it.
Correct, okay? Now, do you see your right hand here? Your right hand has a firearm, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You see your left hand,
No, sir, I don't.
okay? Right here.
That's the right hand, right?
No, your right hand is going to be with the gun, and if you look to the left side of your body,
I
you'll
have
see your left hand.
It's not against, I don't know where it's at. It's not in front of me.
Okay. So you don't see it go over towards your chest?
see my hand moving because I'm being attacked. I don't know which way it's moving. I mean, it's moving all around. If you're, I don't know, it's in my lap perhaps.
Well, it's in your lap after you bring it over from your left side, which is exactly what I'm asking you.
I did not consciously grab a hold of my chest. That's the only answer I can give.
You did it instinctively because it's part of your training.
No, we have never trained to grab a hold of your chest.
I'm not using the whiteboard anymore.
Okay.
Mr. Martin, can you guys push it back a little bit further so I can see the podium? That's good, that's good, thanks.
So a couple more questions about that particular scenario. When you came back from the manager, when did you grab your popcorn? Immediately when you sat down?
Yes, I was sitting down, yes.
Okay. So before you were struck with the phone?
Before I was what, sir? Before what?
Before you said you were struck with the phone, you grabbed your popcorn?
Right, yes, sir.
Okay. But your popcorn doesn't spill when you're struck with the phone very hard, does it?
I can't see that either.
Okay. Now, I didn't show you the videos are in evidence, but let me ask you this. If a phone's thrown at you that hard, how is it that you keep going forward after the time the phone hits you? I mean, wouldn't you agree with me that generally when someone's hit hard with an object, they react, that they put their hands up to where they were hit, or their head goes backwards, they make some type of reaction. Why is it that you don't react at all once you're hit by this cell phone so very hard?
I could speculate and say that I had karate training, I had grappling training. When you're involved in a life or death struggle, you don't take time to grab your face. You need to defend yourself. After it was over with, I replaced my glasses and checked my face.
Okay, so just my last couple of questions. You remember when you were sitting in the cruiser, Detective Proctor's cruiser?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and he asked you a whole series of questions to go into detail about what occurred, correct?
I don't remember those detectives asking me very many questions at all.
Okay, but we have a transcript for it, and we have your voice, correct?
Right.
All right. And when he came back to talk to you a second time, he said, look, and I'm paraphrasing, Curtis, if there's anything else you have to tell me, right?
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes.
When you were sitting in the back of that cruiser, and now we're talking about this hit that you're so certain of, that it glazed and it was just a terrible hit. You remember when you were in the back of that cruiser and you said, as I'm sitting back in here, I'm second guessing myself?
Oh, yes,
Did he
sir.
even hit me?
Yes, sir. I second guessing it for the last 8 years. Anybody that's involved in something like that and they don't second guess it, it's got to be nuts.
Okay, but what I'm asking you is not if you second guessed that. You second guessed the very fact that you were even hit.
I second guessed every step of that encounter. Yes, sir, I did.
You agree with me it's not good to second guess whether or not someone ever hit you? Or even second guess yourself when you shoot and kill another person?
I think that if you are human and you have respect for human life, you would always second guess yourself constantly.
You second guessed this very hit that you testified to.
I second guessed this entire event.
I understand. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you. Redirect?
Yeah, just briefly, Your Honor. Mr. Reeves, let's go from the beginning of the prosecutor's cross. just briefly. He indicated that you were able to do all these things despite your current condition. Would you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury if you have a handicap sticker on your car?
Objection, this is not relevant to
Oh, yeah.
2014.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Mr. Reeves, he asked you about the fact that you could go hunting, get up on a tree, mow the lawn, right?
Yes, sir.
Somehow indicating that you don't have the conditions that you currently have, correct?
Correct.
Tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury why you do all those things.
Your Honor, I'll just object to the timeframe that we're talking about. It doesn't matter what's happening.
2013, 2014, those 2 years.
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury why you do those things.
To try to maintain a level of fitness as I get older, keep my joints. I do range of motion exercises. I rode bike. I used an elliptical. I tried to do it 4, 5, sometimes 6 days a week. I pick up, instead of using a pitchfork to pick up things in the backyard, I use my hands to bend over and pick them up. It exercises my back. I wear a back brace when I mow the
Your Honor,
yard.
I
So,
object. It's fine.
Oh, well, I can finish.
so that I don't get jerked around while I'm riding the lawnmower. So that's what I've always done. Like when we shoot sporting clays, we walk for the physical exercise.
Do you just want to stay home and sit in a chair all day? Is that what you want to do?
No, sir, I don't.
Do you ever want to be at a point in your life where all you do?
Objection, relevance.
Oh,
Do you ever want to be at a point in your life where that's all you're able to do?
No, sir, I'm not looking forward to that at all.
Now, the prosecutor showed you and the jury 2 photos. Can I approach? One was, I want you to read that exhibit number for the jury.
The ID number or the evidence number?
The evidence number.
The evidence number is 9-1.
9-1. Okay, so we're going to put 9-1 here. Now I want you to read this exhibit. These are the 2 exhibits that we passed around to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Read the exhibit number for that one.
7-3.
7-3. Let me give you one more. I want you to read that 9-1 is a part of a composite, okay, exhibit. I want you to read all of the numbers in this composite.
Each one of those that are
Each
stapled
one of
together?
them.
9-6, 9-5, 9-4, 9-3, 9-2.
9-2. And so the 9-1 that you mentioned earlier goes with that composite, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now, may I ask the witness to step down?
Sure.
Now, Mr. Reeves, I'm going to show you what's 9-1. That was the one that was shown with the 7-3 photo, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's look at that, hold it up for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I'm going to show now 9-2. You see 9-2 there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do you see a hand coming in that direction?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's put that behind your fingers there.
Yes, sir.
Let's look at now 9-3. You see 9-3?
Yes, sir.
Can you point out to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury a hand?
Yes, sir, it's right here.
Okay, let's go to 9-4. Can you show the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the hand there in 9-4?
It's all the way across, right up against my face, looks like.
It's a progression in the composite, correct?
Yes, sir.
And let's go now to 9-5.
Yes, sir.
Can you look and show the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the hand there at 9-5?
Yes, sir, it's all the way across again up against my face.
And then finally, let's go now to 9-6 and show the hand to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
Yes, sir, it's still in contact right there, all the way across, right over the top of my wife's head.
And that was the popcorn incident, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now let's go to 7-3. Stay right there, please. 7-3, what you testified in cross-examination, was the first attack, correct?
I think so, yes, sir.
Would you show the ladies and gentlemen of the jury Mr. Olson coming over his seat in the first attack?
Right here.
You may take your seat. No further questions.
May this witness be released? Or, are you done with him?
Yes, yes.
You can have a seat, Mr. Reeves. Counsel approach.
Oh, you
Mr. Escobar?
The defense will rest.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, obviously you heard the defense rest. That means that the lawyers and myself have some work to do that does not involve you. It's going to take us probably a couple hours, so I'm going to let you go home for today. And the plan for tomorrow will be closing arguments first thing when you come in at 8:30. After that, after all the closings, I instruct you, and then it'll be time for your deliberations. So, as I mentioned earlier in the week, I don't know how long things will last tomorrow, so please make arrangements to possibly stay late. You know, I have no way of knowing how long your deliberations may go, but that's the order of business for tomorrow, okay? Any questions? All right, please remember my instructions during the recess. No independent research, no discussing the facts amongst yourselves or with anyone else. Don't watch the news, and we'll see you back in here, well, jury room at 8, a little after 8, what time you get there for them, but we're going to start at about 8:30. Thank you.
For recess for the jury.
Order after. We'll be in recess till then.